Welcome to Dance Mogul Magazine. It's such a pleasure to be here with Tony Morales. Can you please share with us what the great experience was like for you in your latest production, Idyll?
Um, Overall, it was just very fulfilling watching the dancers grow from the beginning of the rehearsal process to the end of the rehearsal process. Watching my students, believe it or not, my young students, my 8 girls from Ballet Forte, from beginning to end, and how finally they embodied the piece and embodied the work. But just, you guys know this, from the planning stages, which were months and months and months beforehand, to finally get to the production and sit in the back and watch the whole thing just work like clockwork, for me was the most satisfying, to just watch everything just click on all cylinders, and I could sit back and just be an audience member and enjoy the show was the most satisfying thing, actually.
And thank you. Now, I want to cover several different components to this production because it was a very different kind of experience for us. We were able to witness some of your processes briefly online because you were able to share them with the social media family, and personally I thought that was very encouraging and inspiring because you were actually showing young people what is involved in the planning stages of putting together a production without giving them the details.
Right.
But can you just tell us, a little bit about that
About,
in terms of your processes? Because you posted on social media the different things that you were doing in terms of your preparation
right,
for your production.
the process in general or
Yeah.
the process in detail?
Well, in general, you seemed intent on posting updates, and I
Right.
kind of thought that was a good way of showing an onlooker that, well, okay, if you're going to do a production, be prepared because,
Right.
you were giving us updates, and you may not even had known, but it was actually a teaching process as well.
Well, I sort of tend to do that in everything that I do, as a teacher. But the process itself, you guys know this because you work together, and it's very, very, very involved. And there are so many details involved in a production, especially if you're doing everything. And I would wake up 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock, and go through all the things that needed to be done each day, or even before we got close to rehearsal. I made sure that everything was set up in such a way that when we started rehearsing, there would be very few things that could happen. And if something did happen, I would be prepared to fix it immediately. So, for example, all the scheduling of all the dancers, which was a huge undertaking because they all have jobs. And we rehearsed 4 days a week, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays. And getting them all in the same place at the same time, and then getting them all to be in the right places for each piece, getting the guest choreographer to be involved, getting my students to be involved was a lot of planning. And then once that was planned, I had to get my schedule involved as far as my teaching schedule, my teaching here, my teaching, at my studio, my gyrotonic studio. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of planning, and I feel like, I've been doing this since 1997, and with each production, it gets a little bit easier because you know what to look for, what to fix, what to be planned for. So there were moments I was so planned ahead that I could kind of sit back and just relax and, have a bottle of champagne and whatever and sit with my wife and say, hey, this is just running. But it took so much work to make sure that the machine was running. I don't know what else to say.
No,
it's
that's
just a lot of work.
That's a great message to put out there because there are certainly levels to life, and there are levels to success, and there are levels to all aspects of any particular thing that an individual would like to do. And certainly when it comes to dance and dance production and leadership, you certainly displayed all of those qualities by letting onlookers in on your thought processes in terms of how you prepared for this particular production. But away from the social media aspect of it, I want to ask you about your own personal vision as far as Idyll, how did you sit down to prepare for the overall creative vision that you wanted to display?
For this particular production.
Yes.
Yeah. So what happened was last year I did a show at the Idyll studio, the Idyll Theater, and each year, you do a project, and then the next year you're already like 3 weeks later, like, oh, I think I got an idea for the next one. So last year, maybe a month later, I had this idea to do this production, and I had a lot of the dancers in place, and the guest choreographer is a friend of mine, and she had come to the last show, and then I went to a show where she had shown a piece, and I went to see her piece, and that was the first component. I had asked her, we want you to be involved in this production. I always try to bring in guest choreographers or choreographer. Many years ago, what I used to do is I'd bring in guest choreographers and they'd bring their own dancers. And that sort of worked and sort of didn't because, we won't even get into all that. But what I wanted to do is bring in a guest choreographer and have my dancers dance their work and just really highlight my dancers. So once we got that aspect in place, the main piece, Idyll, was something that I wanted to do for a really, really long time. It's a piece of music that I've known for over 20 years when I was a young dancer, and I always wanted to choreograph it, and I just pulled out the music and I said, it's just time to hit this music, and I listened to it again and I put all the pieces in place, because that particular piece of music is 7 sections, so I picked the 3 that were the most moving to me, and then what I tried to do is create a story around that one piece. But then I picked some, older pieces, and then I pulled in my dancers from Ballet Forte because they were also involved in our last production. And what I try to do is, by bringing the students in, is they get an opportunity to work with my dancers and be in a production setting with with the lighting designer and the stage manager, and so they feel what it's like to actually be in a company setting, in a rehearsal setting. So they see what it's like to be professionals because they're young students.
Yes.
But overall, a lot of it has to do with the dancers, believe it or not. Each year I pick certain dancers, some of them stay with me, some of them leave, so I'll pick new dancers. I'm inspired by the dancers, and what I try to do is highlight their strengths and put them in the pieces that I think are best suited for them. And then what I really try to do is overall create a theme through the evening, so that way from the first piece to the last piece, it sort of grows and climaxes, and then at the very end, people leave feeling really good about what they saw.
Yes.
So with this production in particular, I feel like with each production it gets better because you're supposed to get better. I hope you get better as you you do things. With this one in particular, I was really proud. I was just really proud of the dancers. I was proud of everybody who was involved, and proud of myself actually. I worked really hard on it, and it worked out perfectly, thematically, musically, everything was perfect about it, and so. I don't know
No, that's great. That's great. You mentioned the word theme, and I just wanted to touch bases on that because as an audience member, for me, I was able to see the dancers demonstrate the different emotions, anything from love,
Right.
passion,
Right.
to frustration,
Right.
through tension, through acceptance.
Right.
I was able to see all the dancers transmit all of those emotions
Right.
throughout the different pieces, and also the way that you worked with the lighting individual
Right.
to help to highlight and connect with the visual in terms of lighting. I thought that you guys did a really good job with that, and it was just great to see the emotions of dance, and that is leading me to say this to you. I noticed that you and your wife are very particular about keeping dance authentic.
Right.
Tell us about that.
Well, my wife she was quite a dancer with Dance Theater of Harlem. I danced for quite a while, and I stopped dancing at a young age. I stopped at 30, and what happened was, to make a long story short, a really good friend of mine who was a mentor of mine, I was working in Kansas City at the time, was murdered. And I went back to dance with the company for 6 months, and then I went on tour with another company to India for 2 months. And as that was all happening, I felt like there's got to be more to dance than just being a dancer. And I had decided then that I wanted to choreograph more, because I had already been choreographing, dancing at the same time. And I just thought I want to get into choreographing and teach dancers what it is to be a real artist. Because this one individual, his name was Lenny Williams, was all about not only teaching and choreography, but mentoring and teaching the dancers and his students the whole package. What it is to be an artist who is trying to say something, not just a dancer who can, there's a lot of dancers out there who can do a lot and technically, and they're all wonderful and so on and so forth. But what I try to do with my dancers and with dance in general is there has to be something behind it. There has to be your intention behind it, or your passion behind it, or a story behind it, or there also has to be the history behind it and the etiquette and there's a whole package that is sort of kind of getting lost because there's so many things going on right now. There's this competition and that competition and all these things that are going on. So dance is sort of getting cheapened, and for me in particular, I want to keep the tradition of keeping it special because it's an art form, and I work tirelessly, and even in my teaching here, yes, the dancers work technically and they do all the things, but what I do is I just stop with them every once in a while, and I give them lectures about dance and passion and tradition, and talk to them about the history of dance, so they understand that there's a lineage that needs to be expressed, and they need to be knowledgeable as to their history. I mean, you're only going to be so good as to what you know and what you experience, and it's important to me, especially for my dancers and teaching in general, is that they understand the whole package. And so when I rehearse with my dancers, for example, we rehearse and we go through the steps, but once we get through, my thing is once we get the steps done and everything's ready to go, I start coaching them big time on the nuance of the piece. So, as you said, there's all this emotion. I really coach them on the texture of each piece. Like, for example, Martel, for example, amazing young dancer, 20 years old, and comes from the Idyll school, and he dances a certain way. He's very talented, but I started working with him on different textures, saying to him, you can't dance this piece like this, and this piece like this, and this piece like this, and this. You can't dance them all the same because they're all so totally different. And with all my dancers, that's what I try to get them to understand. There's an emotional and an acting aspect to dancing, which takes you to a whole nother level as an artist. And these are the things that the audience remembers, and it touches them. You can go see a million concerts, and a lot of dancers they can do. But a lot of them don't really touch you, and it's important that the dancers learn that. And I'm all about that, really. That's my biggest thing.
Okay.
Even in what I do with my teaching, my gyrotonic teaching, it's sort of the same. It's not dance, but it's about embodying the work. You know what I mean?
Yes, and thank you so much for that. That is allowing me to segue into the next question. You're certainly an individual that there are many layers to you, and I think that's what caught our attention, that you seem to accept the full responsibility that comes with being a leader and being an individual that thinks bigger than himself and focuses on culture all the way up into the universe. And that leads me to ask you this particular question. How do you stay grounded enough in the midst of all that you do and aspire to do and still focus on loving your family the way that you do?
It's a good question. What I find is most important, I try to spend a lot of time in my gyrotonic studio, when there's downtime, I spend a lot of downtime by myself. I make sure I work out, I make sure I exercise, I make sure I stretch, I make sure I eat right. I find that the early morning time also, I get up very early with my cat. But it's become a tradition and sort of a ritual. My cat and I get up 4:30, 5 o'clock. We have our hour or two where we just kind of hang out, and I can really focus in on the day and focus in on what needs to be done, focus in on what needs to be done in the future. It helps really clarify what it is I want to do in the early morning, believe it or not. And then also there are times when I like to just have fun, have little parties at my house with my wife and really close friends, drink champagne, have good food, and stay connected to all the people who are supporting me. I find that to be incredibly important as well. And I try to spend time with some of my dancers. I get friendly with them, and periodically we'll go out, we'll have dinner, we'll talk, I invite them over. It's all of it. There are so many things. I find that also teaching. I find that teaching here, that's why I wanted you guys to come here. Teaching here keeps me really grounded because it's easy to work with professionals, but when I work with students, I have to sort of tone it down just a little bit. Though these students here are very talented, it makes me kind of reflect back on myself as a young dancer and what it is I was trying to do and what I was striving for, and it sort of humbles me and makes me think about how lucky I am to be in the situation where I can teach and bring these kids up, and then have dancers I can work with, have a business, have a beautiful wife, have a son, have all these things happening at the same time. It's sort of a blessing actually to have all of those things working and being healthy.
That's good. Thank you so much. And in closing, in addition to your love and passion for dance and the arts in general, where do you see your company going, in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of helping to develop the next generation of dancers and leaders?
What I would like to do, we need to get more funding. That's always the struggle. And with each project, what I do is I try to build on that project, make sure videos, make sure all the promotional material is set so that we can present it to get grants to do this, to do that. What I would like is to get the money so we can do more productions, and then possibly go into the school system and teach young kids who don't experience dance or have never even seen this style of dance, and get them to experience what we're trying to do, and let the dancers work with them, or I work with them, or go out and perform more in different venues where, what I do is considered traditional in a lot of ways. I don't know if you know, a lot of the dance nowadays is becoming more contemporary, quote unquote contemporary, and I still sort of stay in the traditional mode, even though it's evolving. So what I like to do is I have a passion for teaching, and what I try to do is, even when I'm choreographing, I'm teaching. Even when I'm home, I'm teaching. I would like to get this company to a place where we had more money so we can take the message or the passion and teach young people about what we're doing so they're inspired to dance. I would love to see, I was lucky enough in school to be inspired by many companies coming to my school. And in high school, I was lucky enough to have a dance teacher who said, you should go dance. And at that time, I was no dancer, believe it or not. And she said, you have a passion for dance, just try, do it, see what happens. There's not a lot of that going on anymore, where people are inspiring young people to really follow their passion to dance professionally, because there's not a lot of money in it. But even though wherever it takes them, it doesn't matter. It could take them somewhere else. The discipline will help them in whatever that they do. But I think for us, what I'd love to do is keep the dancers that I have and build on that, and just take this and teach in different schools and perform in different places, and just keep talking about what it is that we're doing. So they're inspired by what we're doing, and hopefully inspire young people to want to dance.
Okay. And in closing, is there anyone that you would like to thank, sponsors, or anyone that you feel that has helped you along your journey?
God, I've had so many people help me. it's funny because it's the whole package. It's not just me. There are a lot of people who have helped me move in this direction. So I can go through, there are many teachers. Milton Myers was a big mentor of mine who said, you need to do this. Ruth Courier was a big mentor of mine who put me in on a trajectory. Lenny Williams was another one. Jonathan Hollander from Battery Dance Company was another one. Each one of them have given me encouragement to kind of be where I am right now. They've all said, you have something you want to say, and you need to say it, and we'll help you. My wife, she has to listen to it every day, but she keeps encouraging me. She's like, you have the passion, you have to do it. And the dancers too, my dancers, I feel like they're not just dancers who are, doing a gig. There's a support system around me, all the way around. So and also the school here, Andrea has been a huge supporter of what I'm doing. And it's important, that's why I wanted you to get to know her and meet her. She's been a very big supporter of what I've been doing, and she lets me do my thing here, which I find very, very helpful. She's not one of these directors who's like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and blah, blah, blah. She's like, you do your thing, the kids love you, and I support it. So everybody, Body Wrappers has helped us, my lighting designer has been tremendous. My photographer, Rachel Neville, is incredible. All of our donors, you guys are great. I think it's really everything. I can't say it's just me. It's everybody around me who supports me, and it gives me the power to do what I'm doing.
And Tony, thank you so much for having us. We appreciated the opportunity that you have extended to us to not only interview you, but your great dancers and your family members, and we look forward to continuing growing our relationship with you. Thank you.